So as we go into the next topic about the changing culture, I just want to say again that this whole series, this whole parenting class is for people who have already decided that they are trusting in Jesus, they're following him, and for those that are interested in doing that. So this part might make people upset if they are someone who opposes Christianity. And so I apologize ahead of time for your offense. I don't apologize for what I'm saying because I really know it to be true and right. I'm already convinced in my heart. I have been walking with the Lord for over 20 years, and I have put his words to the test, and I have found them to be true. You know, I tell my kids this example. I say, if I make this recipe that I find and I do it exactly how it says and it turns out perfectly, I can say that that recipe is true. I can say the same thing even more so about God's word, that I have put those words to the test and I have trusted in them and they have had the result they said they would. And so I'm fully convinced. And that's why I can be so confident today as I share with parents who are wanting to raise their kids in a Christian culture, that what I'm saying is true and God's ways haven't changed even though the culture has. So I'm just going to move forward in this. Most people know the easiest way to change a culture or to make changes in a culture are to change the definitions of words. Okay, so that is drastically happening in our society right now. So words that we've known the meaning of for generations are now changing very quickly. And so it's important for us to know how these words are being defined to our children and to our culture, because it's very important. And I would just pull out a few words right now. One would be the word kindness in this generation, which I would connect with the word tolerance. Everyone for generations has believed in the importance of kindness for the most part. But now kindness has come to mean that we should be kind and even more so be quiet with things that we don't agree with. That's how kindness is now being defined, and that means to swallow hard everything and just go along with things. And that's what tolerance is. Instead of just being able to hear someone's different point of view, not agree, and just go on peacefully, it's been extended a little bit further to say, you need to come along with us or you are a hater, you're a bigot, and all these names that are being thrown out there. And so when you see signs that just say the word kindness, it's not meaning necessarily the same word that we know as kindness. And your children who haven't grown up with that word are not receiving the same definition as well. So these are important conversations to have with your kids about how tricky words can even be to change a culture. Another word can be equity. You would hope that everyone of our age believed in equity, right? That everyone gets the same shot, right? That's important. And most people are for that and should be for that. But equity has come to mean that everyone gets the same result, no matter how hard they worked for it. And I think most people, if they knew how the definition was being used, would say that they wouldn't believe in that kind of thinking. And it gets kind of tricky because we're being pulled into believing certain things with a word that we used to know as meaning something else. So we've just come to a time when we have to be talking to our kids about the meanings of words and how they're being changed and how that affects our culture. The next thing I want to strongly encourage parents to do is to spend time with their kids. Okay? I'm talking quality of time over quantity, but if you can get both, go for it, because quantity of time is also amazing. But if you don't have enough time in your day because you're working and kids are going to after school and having babysitters on the weekends, I'm just thinking that it's a hard realization that the people that your kids are spending time with are not going to have the same heart for them as you would, for the most part. So it's important possibly to make adjustments to your schedule if you're feeling like you're just not getting quality time with your kids. Because first, what I just said, and the other thing, do people who are with your kids most of the time hold the same values as you do? That's a very important thing. And it's hard to know, but the only way you can, if your kids are at school a good amount of time, is to have time with the people that are taking care of them. Get to know their after-school care people. Have conversations with their teachers, and let them know what your core beliefs are, so that if something is happening in your kid's school that would go against what your beliefs are, that you could request your kids have a study hall, or that you be notified ahead of time. Example, we just learned that in New York City, $200,000 has been spent towards their drag queen story hour. Okay, so not towards math, not towards social studies, not towards science, right? This is really a painful thing to even share, that they're having people who are dressing in drag coming and telling story hour to children, right? And the whole idea behind that is acceptance, right? And so if you're learning that this is happening in your school and you've told your teacher what your values are, you'd like to have an option for your kids. We'd like them to have a study hall. Your voice probably isn't strong enough to not have that in the school, unfortunately, unless you had other parents coming along with you. But you do have a voice to say, I'd like to know ahead of time so I can keep my child home from school, or that I could have another option for my child, which should be offered at your school. Okay, you should have a voice to ask for that. I'll just tell a personal experience that one of my children was at a school, and they were reading a book about a couple that was having a love affair, and it was two girls. And I just kindly went to the school and said, I'm not going to say what should be offered at the school because it's not a Christian school, but I would ask that you consider all the Christians and that are at the school and the people that practice their Jewish faith and parents that would be opposed to this, and that you could pick some books that all people could agree with and be okay with. And in the meantime, I just want another book offered to my child because I don't want them reading that. When my kids go off to college, I'm not going to have a voice in that. But when they're in junior high, I do have a voice in that, and I want to know what's going on in my kids' school and have a voice in all of that. So our culture of the USA used to follow biblical worldview. Really. This country, no matter what is said, was founded on biblical principles. And people followed those, not necessarily even because they were Christians, but because they could see the value of them and could see that they were true. And since we have gone away from them so much, the way that our culture is deciding what's right and wrong is by popular consensus, right? That's the only way. What other form of standard do they have if you're not going to use the word? It's by what's popular, what most people are saying, or what we can portray as most people saying is right. And so that's why you're seeing things over and over in our culture, because they're trying to make them very palatable and acceptable and seen as what the majority of people believe in. And so that's why you're seeing homosexuality in all kinds of movies, even children's movies now. That's why we see events like Shout Your Abortion. So if I'm able to shout something to all people, that must not be embarrassing, and it must be acceptable to all people. And so we want to help our kids understand that just because something's popular doesn't mean that it's right. Okay? And you've heard the saying, just because something's right doesn't mean it's going to be popular. Now, just a little side note, a caveat to that. In saying this, if you're watching this and this is making your blood boil because it feels like I'm being judgmental, I promise you I'm not. I'm not being judgmental of anyone who's had an abortion or anyone who's living a homosexual lifestyle. I am just saying that I am going to be teaching my children what God says, who created us all, and I really trust, says is the best life for us to have. And he's saying that these aren't. And so it's not something to be shamed. It's not something to be spoken hatred towards. It's just that we're supposed to be able to say and use judgment in what is right and what is not, and what is best for us and what is not, but not to be judgmental. And we need to be able to be okay with, because it's part of life, in judging things without being judgmental.